right, it's question and answer Tuesday from rainy Hawaii right now. I'm going to answer all the questions that you guys asked me while the rain does, so hopefully it doesn't come down on us, and while the kids are playing with the cats. The main reason why I wouldn't recommend doing this is that at nighttime is when your body goes into detoxification, and if it's focusing more on digestion, then you're not going to be able to detoxify properly. So that's the real reason. Edolin's a great prebiotic, so it helps feed the microbiome, all the little bacteria guys in there. Do you need to take a probiotic after? Yeah, it's a good idea. It's always a good idea. I mean, especially if you have an altered micro. You know, I haven't heard many good things about IUDs in general. Most of the women that I see that use IUDs actually have adverse reactions, and a lot of them actually have natural removals, so it slips out on its own. So this is always a touchy subject, but you naturally make cannabinoids in your breast milk, and cannabinoids is actually what helps the babies to create the sucking motion, so you decide on your own. Whenever you got insulin circling around in your body, especially high levels of insulin, you are never going to burn fat for energy. So if you have excess insulin, that's one of the reasons why you may not be losing the excess weight. Acupuncture is awesome. It's all about personal preference, and sometimes people get reactions afterwards, which is actually pretty normal, but it's, again, all up to personal preference. I love it. Any type of mineral imbalance is always indicative of the HPA axis being out of whack, you know, especially the adrenals getting out of whack because you don't produce enough levels of aldosterone, but eating stuff that will support potassium like banana. Routines are very, very important for your daily biorhythm. So yes, I get up pretty much at the same time, eat and drink stuff at the same time every single day, just because it's all about biorhythm function, and that's where I work on with every single patient. This is what we call orthostatic hypotension, typically caused by adrenal gland insufficiency, the inability for your adrenal glands to keep up, and the interaction between epinephrine and cortisol. This kind of stuff always goes back again, like I said, to the HPA axis dysregulation, which affects the gut and how digestion and peristalsis happens, and also inflammation. For the average person, yes, but don't overdo it, you know, like anything else. Good in small quantities, yeah, it's okay. So if you guys go to my blog, I have a blog post specifically on this, the first steps that you should take to managing this whole thing, and it's basically creating a mental distraction and physical movement. So that's how you manage it. In all honesty, most people are doing it the wrong way. I always recommend eating according to your seasons, eating according to your geography, and then looking at your current state of metabolism. This is indicative of probably what they call a mucoid plaque buildup within your intestines. This is very common for people. Got to get that mucoid plaque out. So this is kind of gross, but parasites will create their own toxins, basically their own poop in you, which will affect your nervous system, which will then create bruxism or jaw clenching. That's how parasites affect your TMJ. Vitex or chaseberry is really great for reestablishing the HPA axis and getting your progesterone levels back regulated in proportion to estrogen. Here's another one. You guys should go over to my blog. I have a video that I did on how to get rid of candida. It goes through a different three-step protocol to get rid of that. But to answer your question, no. So I run the 588G food allergy panel by Dunwoody Labs. It's the most comprehensive panel. Then from there, you got to look at what things you really do need to eliminate, and then working through a gut restoration protocol. Do you need to do that with a doc? Not necessarily. It just gets you there faster, but you can do it on your own. Usually takes people a lot longer, but highly possible. It's not that I don't recommend vitamins. I don't recommend just taking a blank, overall multivitamin for children, just because you're not necessarily dealing with the excesses. You're only dealing with the deficiencies, and it may cause excesses. So yeah, you can definitely supplement if you need to, if diet is substandard or the conditions, like you said, areas in the world that gets less sunlight. Yeah, you may need to supplement with vitamin D, but I don't like people relying on that. Most companies will use that because it's a flowing agent and keeps things from caking together and all that kind of stuff. Not a real big fan of it, but most things that you're going to take is going to have that in it anyway. This comes down to managing your stress levels and keeping that HPA axis all in one good motion. So when the immune system drops because of stress, those little guys come out to play. Yes, it is. I do it all the time for myself, but it takes years and years of practice and perfection on your technique. It also comes with a sense of you need to be unbiased. LDN or low dose naltrexone works really great for retroviruses. And sometimes that's one of the things that will get your body over the hump. So sometimes you need it. Taking bile salts really helps in this sense, or you can do a gallbladder pump. You can actually look those up. I think YouTube has a bunch of videos, but a gallbladder pump, basically you're pumping the upper clavicle. Again, this is just from my research. Most infants, actually most human beings, their immune system is not fully formed until later on in their 2, 3, 4 year old. So it's not really effective there. Again, just speaking from our own personal experience, we never chose to do any for our children, and they've traveled all around the world. And they're perfectly fine, except when they don't listen to us. Best water in the world, in my opinion, is Mountain Valley spring water. That's the best one. The other stuff like the Berkeys and Kangen, can it get fluoride out? Nope. Two things. D-mannose, so D/mannose, MANNOSE, and then you got to clean out the gut because the gut is out of balance and it's causing UTIs. Go check out my podcast episode where I interviewed Dr. Terry Walls. I also have an upcoming blog post that I share my protocol on how I work with people with neurodegenerative diseases, so look out for that. I like magnesium oil, lavender oil, clary sage, and peppermint oil. Really helps a lot with that. And this is a question I get a lot. The research is up in the air, but I say don't do it. I don't even do that myself. All the studies point to a negative effect long term of using oral contraceptives, so I'd stay away from it if possible. Lifestyle and environmental cues, so making sure that you're not stressed out too much and your light dark cycles are regulated. Get enough sunlight during the day, no sunlight at night. Depends what for. For reconstruction, sure. If it helps the emotional status, sure. But there's other things that you need to work on with that. That's what I work on with a lot of patients there. How do you stuff to get the testosterone levels down? Like licorice, saw palmetto, vitex, reishi mushroom. What else? Topical progesterone is actually another good one. This actually sounds like you may have indigestion and gas buildup. That's typically what you'd feel there. Most docs, they're trying to do good. And when people think that they're getting, ripped off and just getting the money sucked out of them, it's just because a lot of them just really don't know what to do. Now, there's probably a subset that are in it for the money. There's always those, but overall, most of them actually really want to help. And the reason, like I said, if you guys are willing and really serious about your health, go ahead and schedule consultation. The consultations are absolutely free. Just make sure you guys show up. There's been a couple of you guys that have scheduled and hasn't showed up, so show up. 1 cup a day is perfectly fine. Just don't go overboard. And when I say 1 cup, it's not the freaking gigantic one from Starbucks. 1 cup, little one, European style. I don't know much about the correlations, but if you think about it, there's a deeper seated emotional thing that's always running behind, and that needs to be addressed. Like I said, none of my kids got any of these, and they're perfectly fine, except when they want to mess with us. This is a man. This is a deep-seated gut-related issue, and also a dysregulation in the light-dark cycle. So a lot of work to be done here. I don't necessarily worry about lymph nodes, except it gets really painful or there's something else going on. But usually, generally, a warm compress would help. Yeah, see, this is my problem with a lot of functional medicine docs, is that they just run excessive amounts of tests and then just using supplementation as medication. You got to actually know what you're doing instead of just trying to. I don't know how many people that come to see me and then they're saying, I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars, and it sounds like this is your case. It looks like they don't have a plan, and that's what's going on. Either you're not digesting properly, or you're stressed out, or both, probably both. Chronic amounts of stress, which is affecting how your body's ability to digest and your blood sugar levels. You always start with balancing out your biorhythms, getting your body's biorhythms in alignment with the natural rhythms of the day. That's where you always start. Sugars and stuff like this is sugars. I mean, everything, if it's creating an insulin response, it doesn't necessarily matter what type of sugar it is. It's creating an insulin response. Is it bad? Well, depends what your goals are. 99% of the time, it's because you have leptin resistance and they haven't identified that, and you probably have dysregulated receptors, which you need to balance out your pH to get those receptors working back properly. Step 1, clear out the mold. Step 2, get an air purifier. And step 3, you got to detoxify. One of the best things you can do is zeolite. Not necessarily. Sometimes that's what your body needs to get over the hump. If your thyroid is just down, sometimes you need that for a short period. But long term, yeah, it does make your thyroid lazy. 80% of the time, this has to do with your colon. And your colon's not doing well. The other 20% of the time is a circulation issue, specifically in your lymphatic system. Got to get those moving. You got to weigh the pros and the cons, and sometimes the cons outweighs the pros in this situation, like development of cancer later on in life. I would definitely focus on gut and obviously hormonal issues, but there's actually light therapy that you can use that will help it out. All the stuff's on my website. General stuff like ashwagandha, rhodiola, and CBD oils work really well. That's where I'd start, but there's an underlying neurotransmitter imbalance. Got to work on that. Well, that's because every single diet has a different goal. So depending upon what your goals and what your current metabolic state is going to dictate your macro amounts and your nutritional needs. Ozone therapy and ozone infused oil pulling works really well in this sense. So give that a try. Depending upon the ink types, a lot of the older ink types have lots of heavy metals in them, so are they unsafe long term? Those ones, yeah. Overall, our digestive tracts actually don't do it really good with any gluten, so probably smart to stay away from that. That's what I typically recommend for toddlers, and it just depends upon their activity levels. If they're falling down a lot more, then they may need to get adjusted more, but once a month is fairly well. Using a neti pot is really good in this sense, and sometimes what you can do is take a couple drops of like nascent iodine and then mix that in there as well. But you got to work on getting your immune system back up in your gut. Only if you need some type of objective data, but if you don't, just jump right in, because if you do need it, it costs a lot of money to do that. But if you don't, there's no biggie. There's always some type of underlying kidney issue whenever I hear this. So stuff like asparagus and L-arginine is going to be something that's really needed to address that. If you saw my post earlier, I'm going to be doing a shared Instagram live with Yellowbird. We're going to be talking about how your personal care products are affecting your levels of toxicity and how to get rid of that. I've had a handful of patients that have negative reactions to these the fillers and Botox, but there are other ways that you can utilize, like light therapy, to improve collagen function and decrease lines. So hormonal imbalance, go back to a couple more posts that I talked about dealing with cramps and all of that stuff. So I don't want to get too graphic on this, but I've had many of my patients who are using IUDs where the IUD actually came out, never stayed put. So kind of crazy in that sense. I actually did a video training on this, on why I'm not a fan of it. Do you get results? Yes, but long term I have issues with this. It's on my blog.